Hey everybody, it's Rich Shea from the Shea Law Firm here in the Woodlands, Texas, and we are going to be talking about Texas Nursing Home Medicaid. Specifically today, we're going to be talking about income and asset limits for 2022. So to get to the quick answer for those that want it quickly, the income limit for Texas Nursing Home Medicaid in 2022 is $2,523 per month. That is gross income, not net income. So if the applicant has any deductions like taxes or Medicare premiums or any type of deductions, you got to add those back in because they use the gross income only and they don't do anything with the net income as far as eligibility goes. So the good news with that is that if you're over the limit or your parent or spouse is over that limit, it can be you can get around it. There's a income trust or a Miller trust here in Texas, which will take somebody who's over that limit and bring them back down under that limit for eligibility purposes. The other thing to know about the income limit is it only applies to the nursing home applicant's income. If they're married and their spouse has income, that income does not go into that equation at all. So if you have a spouse in the nursing home and their income is, let's say, $2,000 a month, and that's gross income, and they have a spouse at home who's still working, maybe they're doing consulting or something like that, and their income is, let's say, $6,000 a month. The spouse in the nursing home is not disqualified for being over the income limit because only their income is counted against that. The spouse at home, they get to keep their income without any interference, and it doesn't impact the Medicaid eligibility of the spouse in the nursing home. So that's everything that you need to know about Medicaid income limits. Again, for nursing home Medicaid only, there's a bunch of Medicaid programs that have different limits and different rules. We're only talking about the Texas Nursing Home Program. And remember, if you're under that $2,523 limit in gross income, then you're good. You don't have an issue. If you're over it, then you're going to be disqualified unless you get a Miller trust or an income trust, which would take care of that issue as long as everything's set up correctly. So make sure you go to somebody who knows what they're doing for that. Now we're going to talk about assets for Texas Nursing Home Medicaid. And this can get a little bit complicated if you're married. So we're going to try to keep things simple for this video. And we'll dig into it in a little bit more detail in a future video where we can have some more time and explain things a little bit clearer. So the applicant in the nursing home, they have an asset limit of $2,000. That is only for counted resources, though. It's not every resource. It's only assets that they count as resources. The thing to keep in mind with that is there's a lot of assets that people think are exempt that aren't, and there's assets that people think count that might not. So some examples that people think are exempt would be things like cash value life insurance that they've been setting aside for funeral expenses, or certain types of retirement accounts. Another popular one here in Texas is people think that separate property is not part of the Medicaid case when one spouse is in a nursing home. That's incorrect. All those things do count in some form or another, and you need to make sure that you know the difference between those. So if you're a single person in a nursing home applying for Medicaid, you got to be at $2,000 or less in counted assets, and just make sure you know what is counted and what is not. If you're a married couple, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. So when one spouse goes into a nursing home, the government looks at all the assets that either spouse owns in their name or has any type of access to. They divide that in half. So let's say you have $50,000 in assets between the two of you. They would divide that in half. So the spouse at home would own $25,000 in the eyes of the government, and the spouse in the nursing home owns $25,000 in the eyes of the government. Now the spouse at home, they would get to keep that $25,000, not an issue. But the spouse in the nursing home, they have to be back down to that $2,000 limit. So they've got $25,000, but they have to be down to $2,000. That's putting you at a $23,000 spend down, or what we call at-risk assets, that you'd have to do something about. Now, fortunately, with the right strategy and if the right facts are present, you can. For married couples here in Texas, you can do a lot of things to protect assets. But if you don't take the first step and choose to protect those assets, the government's happy to let you spend them down and waste them on nursing home bills. So for married couples, it's half of the assets. Now, it's subject to a minimum of $27,480. So that's the lowest amount that the spouse will be able to keep. So if you only had $30,000 in assets, the spouse at home would get $27,480. The other spouse would get $2,000. You're not really losing much there. But as you go further up from that limit, then you risk losing more and more assets. Now, that's the minimum. There's also a maximum to what the spouse can keep, and that is $137,400. So if you're up over $300,000, or let's change that example a little bit. Let's say you're at $150,000. Does that mean that the spouse at home gets to keep $137,000 and $137,400? It doesn't, because $137,400 is the maximum. They still go through that equation of half and half. So if you had $150,000, the spouse at home has $75,000, and the spouse in the nursing home has the other $75,000, but they got to get down to $2,000. So they've got a $73,000 spend down there. So when you're dealing with married couples, the assets are one half to the healthy spouse at home, one half to the spouse in the nursing home, subject to a minimum of $27,480 and a maximum of $137,400. So that's how the income and asset limits work for Texas Medicaid in 2022. I know the married couple situation can be a little bit difficult to follow, because that's how the rules are for Medicaid, unfortunately. But we're going to do a deeper dive into that in the future, and we'll get into more details. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about how the income or the assets work for Texas Nursing Home Medicaid, or anything else about Texas Nursing Home Medicaid, feel free to leave a comment below, or reach out in any other manner. Thanks for watching.